Hey guys, my name is Lucas and we're going to be working in Blender 3D today. The whole objective of this tutorial is to give you a basic view of how to model with a background. So the first thing we're actually going to do is bring in that background, and instead of using the background tool in Blender, we're actually going to use an empty, which we used here. Shift A is how we got that menu, and we're going to actually go up to the Object Data tab now. We're going to go up to Image and Open. We're going to go to the desktop folder since that's where this is located, and mace.png is the file I'm using today. As you can see, our background is successfully brought in, and we're going to change the X and Y offsets to negative 0.5 to center them at the origin. And there we go. Next step we're going to do is rotate it 90 degrees on the x-axis, since we're going to be dealing with the z and x-axis today. The z and x-axis is probably the most mobile axis that we can work with, just for the fact that using the number pad keys we have the most camera movement compared to any other axis. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to duplicate and rotate it 90 degrees, so we have two planes that make up our background. This gives us a full view rather than a partial view that we would have had any other way. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually work and add in the mesh. I actually like cubes more than any other form, just for the fact that cubes are very versatile. Other people like cylinders and planes and everything else, but I prefer my cubes. So we're going to hit space and add cube, and we're going to scale it down by 20 times, which is 0.05. And then we're going to actually enter the edit menu. Edit menu can be achieved by both moving that panel I'll show you in just a second, this panel right here, or by hitting tab. As you can see, I scaled that down a little bit, and now we're going to add our first cut. Cuts are made by Control R, and I'm going to just make one cut right in the center. I'm left mouse click there, and I'm going to right mouse click to cancel movement. And I'm going to make another cut right here, if I can get it. And right click to cancel movement. Next thing I'm going to do is, since I want this a rounded shape rather than a square shape, I'm going to select all these points. I can do this by box select or circle select. Circle select is done by C. And I'm going to scale this down by 2/3, or as close to 2/3 as we can get, which is 0.6667. So scale by 0.6667, and we want to only do on without the z-axis, so we're going to hit Shift Z. So it only edits the x and y axis. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring this up to the top lip and this to the bottom lip, of at least this section of the handle. We're going to now extrude this up to the top of the lip. Extrude this down, and down again, and down again, and down one more time. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to make cuts on the larger sections of the blade, or the handle, and we're going to do 3. So we're going to hit Control R and then scroll wheel up twice to get 3 cuts of equal proportion. This also helps with topology. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to mirror it across. We're going to delete those vertices and go to the wrench menu, add modifier, mirror, and then as you can tell it's already selected the X, so we have a perfectly symmetrical object. This helps so we can actually edit on one side and it changes both sides. Now we're going to make sure our 3D cursor is in the center by hitting Shift C. There we go. And now we're going to change our pivot point right down here to 3D cursor. Now we're going to do the same thing as we did before and scale Shift Z so it only edits the X and Y coordinates. And we're going to do this with every single piece, just following the image. Background modeling is probably the most used one by modelers everywhere. There's other ways to model, and we'll discuss those on a later time, but for now, this is the best way to learn. We're going to move that 3D cursor back down, or back to center, since I accidentally clicked it off. and continue down the mesh. You could also change 3D cursor by the 3D cursor menu right there, and just change it by the arrows or by typing the numbers. Okay? This is a very rhetorical process, but necessary in the least. Okay, now that we've got that done, I'm going to continue on the bottom section of the handle, just for the fact that I would rather do this than the top cube. So we're going to work with, since it's pointed rather than a cylinder mesh, we're just going to pull these down, just extrude, and as you can see, it just extruded those two faces. And we're going to extrude all the way down the thing, keeping it fairly the same size, just for the fact that we want to keep topology intact. Make sure it lines up with the mesh. And we're going to bring these up, following that gold trim that we saw prior to adding the mesh. There it is right there. There it is right there. There it is right there. And we want this point almost completely vertical, just for the, or if not vertical, like I'm making it vertical here, just for the fact that it's on a corner and we want it to be keep the same shape as always. Okay, we're going to extrude this up and down yet again, and bring that and change the median point for to x equals 0 on the local menu, just so those points are touching now. There we go. Maybe rotate that a bit, and bring that down just a tad. And now you can see it's a fairly ugly version of it, but you know, we can still work with it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use another tool called proportional editing, and we're going to select these points, go down to this menu and enable. We're going to zoom out a bit since we're in fairly small units right now. And as you can tell, there's this circle piece, and that affects which points are going to be edited. Since I just want these bottom half, I'm going to include the circle in just those bottom pieces, and I'm going to scale those down. Just like so. And there we go. We have a edited mesh that is fairly proportional to itself. I'm going to bring these back just so I can follow the image more like what it looks like. I just want to, oh, there we go. I have to remove that proportional editing tool. Oh, and there we go. We're going to bring this back to the same shape and size as it was prior to this, just for the fact that I want to stay close to what the image looked like. Okay. Bring that down. Scale x 0, and then change that to median point of 0 as well. And there we go. And as you can see, that's looking a lot better. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put it on all sides, and we're going to use the loop select tool. We're going to hit Alt Shift, and then, or Alt right click, Alt, and then Shift Alt right click. And we're going to rotate it on the Z axis, making sure that we have the 3D cursor in the middle and the 3D cursor pivot point selected. And as you can tell, that moves it right to there, right where we wanted it. And we're also going to do this to the other side. We're going to actually do -90 or 270 degrees, whichever works. We're going to duplicate it, and there we go, right there. Now we're going to combine these points down at the bottom. We're going to select all the points that we need, and we're going to hit Alt-M. There we go, Alt-M. And we're going to hit in the center of them all, and that will combine all those points into the center. And let's do it with these points as well. And these points as well. Okay, now we're going to delete these vertices right here, and that one as well. And we're going to actually create triangle faces right here, just because I didn't like the look of how that was. Make sure that, I have not done it yet, but make sure when you're editing, you always try and use remove doubles. It helps you throughout the whole modeling process to make sure that you don't have doubles. And as you can tell, it's a fairly nice looking mesh. We'll go ahead and do that top piece. We're going to hit Alt-H to unhide our pieces. Okay, now we're going to duplicate these points and bring them all the way up to the top here. We're going to make sure that we have our pivot point selected on 3D cursor, and our 3D cursor is in the center. And we're going to actually mirror this across the x-axis right here and create a face out of that. There we are. Now what we're going to do is we're going to rotate it 45 degrees, since that looked more like a 45-degree mesh to me when I looked at the image. And we're going to extrude it down. But only extrude it down this far before scaling it. Change that to median point. Scaling it, and then extruding it down all the way. Now we're going to select all the points and scale Z to a point. And there we go. Now what you could do, you could apply the mirror modifier, and it would make the mesh all one, but we're going to just keep it how it is right now. You can mess with the top if you like, or you can look at my version of it. It doesn't matter to me, but besides that, we are basically done. That gives you kind of an example of how to start modeling via background. Thanks for watching, and we can move on to the next step later on.